It's time for a cup of coffee with Will and Chris at Slumberland Furniture. From Slumberland Furniture in Osage Beach, here are your hosts, William Holtz and Chris Schneider.
Shootout, a record-setting Lake of the Ozarks shootout. That will be our top story on this week's Cup of Coffee with Will and Chris. Speaking of those two hooligans, I'm Will, this is Uncle Chris, and it must be too sunny here at Slumberland at the lake, baby.
You're bright, you're too shiny today, you know.
Probably all that sun and sweat I got this weekend. So Uncle Chris, it's going to be a great show this week. We'll talk about, like I said, shootout. We'll catch you up on the landslide at the lake. Going to be rather expensive, and we talked about it about a month ago, and it is getting worse, as well as a really cool story from Lake Expo's Christy Wagner out of this year's shootout guide. We're going to read that for you. Of course, in sports, football season right around the corner. The KC Chiefs wrap up their preseason schedule with a big win, even though preseason, Mahomes looks sharp. We'll talk about that.
And are we going to do picks this year? You're going to kill me. He always kills me.
There's no doubt about it.
In the football picks.
Yeah, he might win 1 or 2 weeks, but when we shake it out for a 18-week season, I believe 18 weeks this year.
Yeah.
17 games plus a bye week for each team.
Are they going to be kneeling again? That's my main question. If they're kneeling again,
they can kneel as long as you're not kneeling.
I'm not kneeling. That's right.
So who cares what they do? That and a whole lot more this week on Cup of Coffee. But Slumberland is the place to be right now because they have a lot of stuff in store ready for you to take. But as much as I'd love to tell you about it, the guy that's really the brains behind the operation, Daryl Cunningham.
Hey everyone, Daryl Cunningham with Slumberland Furniture at the Lake. Just wanted to let you know, going on right now is our Labor Day sale. It's going to go on through the 12th. Not only are we giving you 25% off all of our Slumberland low price, we're also doing 48 months interest-free financing. Don't forget, we deliver the entire lake area and beyond. Your one-stop shop for every room in the house, Slumberland Furniture, where we're bringing happy home.
All right, as we are back after that Slumberland announcement, you got to come see them. All kinds of cool stuff, and we're actually going to be coming in this week, and we've been teasing it. But I just told Daryl we're coming in on our way down to Branson. We're going to get our new couch, our new bed set up, so my back is already thanking me. Looking forward to that. All right, so the 33rd annual Lake of the Ozarks shootout is officially in the books, and boy, Uncle Chris, what a weekend it was.
I'm telling you, what a record setter, right? Yeah. I mean, we have got Captain Ron and Carrie Mawson from the shootout board on the Spotlight show this week here on Lake TV, and they kind of tell us Saturday was unbelievable.
Yeah.
There were so many boats out there on the water Saturday. It was hard for the racers to get back, to where they needed to go for another run or whatever, which is kind of a bad thing, right? It's a good thing to have all that out there, but a great success.
And you're talking about this photo we're going to show you right here that was published through Lake Expo from Kimbra with Tom Klein helicopters. And you see typically, as you see that line of boats, there's not typically like that second tier.
Yeah.
It's just breathtaking to see that many boats out there. And not just Saturday, but Sunday. Typically a lot of the big dogs and a lot of the runs are out of the way. So as the Sunday afternoon progresses, you don't typically see a lot of those big runs. And this year's Top Gun American Ethanol. Again for the 7th straight year in their 51-foot Mystic. Of course, Mystic owned by John Kosker. Of course, he's the throttleman for the boat, owned by Don Onken.
That thing is so cool. It's just almost out of the water.
It's like a missile, and their record speed since the course has been shortened is 204 miles an hour, which they've hit on 2 occasions. Last year they ran 201. However, this year their top speed was 193, and they didn't do that till their 5th run. They actually ran 5 times this weekend, each time getting faster. So 193 took the Top Gun. Pretty impressive this year for American Ethanol. 7 straight years, and there was talk that there would be a boat there that had an opportunity to beat them. Now, in total, 95 boats ran at the shootout.
Which is a record, I think, right?
Yeah, 95 boats, a total of 253 runs. The most boats they've ever had. There was 189 runs last year, meaning there were 64 more runs this year. Now, there were rumblings, according to the boating world, that a 200 mile per hour contender could dethrone American Ethanol. That, of course, being Alex Pratt's Good Boy Vodka Mystic Catamaran. And you might have seen that. We have that numerous of our videos, our promos. We had a live at Performance when that was sitting in the water, and there's a lot of excitement, wanted to see them. Well, unfortunately, the cat threw a propeller into the hole the day before the race.
Glad nobody got hurt.
Yeah, nobody got hurt, but they weren't able to run, so we'll have to wait for next year. And it wasn't just, that was obviously the Top Gun that repeated 7 straight years, but in every other class, essentially, there were new Top Guns.
That's so cool. There were so many. I spent shootout weekend mostly watching Lake TV, watching the broadcast, and it was fantastic, as it is every year. And they just kept saying, well, here's a guy running the shootout for the first time. So there were a whole lot of first-time racers. As you mentioned, I think there were 95 boats, 92 racers. That means a couple of those racers ran multiple boats, which is kind of cool too. So now I've got a tri-tune, right? A pontoon tri-tune. I've gotten it up to about 43 miles an hour, just flat out humming along. That's just with a 150 on it.
And that feels fast enough,
That
right?
does, right? If I'm in the fishing boat, that's like really scary because you're like on a piece of cardboard flying across the water. But so the pontoon, they set a new record for pontoons this year, 113 miles an hour. Can you imagine flying down the lake in a pontoon at 113?
Of course, that is Brad Rowland who hit that, and they said that it was a 113 3/4 of a mile, because I heard Brad talking about, I hit 114. I had me down for 114. That got me at 113 3/4 of a mile. But he typically is, he's in the Shootout Hall of Fame, and he hit a new record on that
so
3/4 mile course. Just crazy.
Unbelievable, right?
It's wild. You never in a million years thought you'd see a pontoon hit speeds of like 70 to 80 that we saw years back, and then when it capped 100 a few years ago, and now 113, and I guarantee you Brad and his team are going to be anxious to get to work and beat that record next year.
A couple of your friends, the Playcraft people, right?
Jim and Carolyn Doris.
They're just great people, and they're always out there running a pontoon. I think they did again this year.
This was Carolyn Doris's 24th year running in the shootout, and she was the first female to ever run in the Lake of the Ozarks shootout. She's never taken a year off, and she's won her class all 24 years. Of course, she kind of opened the way, or paved the way, if you will, for Carrie Sixkiller, who's also a Shootout Hall of Famer, and this was her 13th straight
What a name.
shootout. Yeah.
I'd like to have a name like that, Chris Sixkiller.
Well, and
that
I'll
makes
tell
me
you,
tough, man.
And her and her husband Don, or her and her husband Ron are awesome.
Yeah.
They come every year, and they think this is the coolest event because the charities. And speaking of the charities, the goal that the shootout has kind of set is $450,000 this year. And while that number will not be known until the end of October, early November, when we have our check presentation, I think we got a good shot to hit it. For instance, the live auction net $175,000 this year. The silent auction, $21,000.
You put on the silent auction.
Well, me and a bunch of other people. Lots of people helped with that. Some crazy great donors and volunteers. And so we're looking forward to November to hopefully having an official announcement. And by what I talked with from Captain Ron, you got to talk with Captain Ron, just seemed like there were more people down, even on property with more people on the water. There were times that Captain Ron's was just absolutely packed. And so for all intents and purposes, this was the best Lake of the Ozarks shootout we've had. Congratulations to American Ethanol on their 7th. And not just, before we move on, there were a couple other Top Guns, including a new record for an electric powered boat.
We had an electric boat out there, and Mrs. Uncle Chris and I were out there, and we're like, what kind of a boat is that, right? Because you could just tell it was different and weird. Well, it was an electric boat. And actually, we stopped by Cool Breeze Marine last week because they gave to the silent auction. And they kind of hinted, we're working on this special prop for this electric boat. And we're like, really? So, and that was that boat. So that thing got up to 49 miles an hour, and they're telling us they're going to have an electric catamaran next year that'll go over 100 miles an hour.
Will be insane. And actually, the first time that electric powerboat ran in the shootout was in 2018, and it was a 25 mile per hour run by Randy Vance in the Calypso. Now, 3 years later, the team that ran that was Vision Marine Technologies and Powered Bruce 22 was the name of their boat. It hit
Yeah.
49, and that was its final run.
You know, now that's a long extension cord. You got that sucker plugged in and you're running down the, in the shootout, right?
I'm not so sure that's how it works.
That's not how it works.
But
though.
you're also not going to see solar panels on top of it. It's not the way it works, Chris. You can tell these two hooligans have no idea about motors or engines.
Man,
but
no.
also in V-bottom,
Yep.
Jim Schultz's 51-foot outer limits factory billet was far and away the second fastest boat. And it was the fastest V-bottom. It ran 161 miles
That was cool
per
too,
hour.
man. That was really cool to watch.
Yeah, all of these boats are so neat. And then, of course, the professional cats. It was Myrick Coyle and Rusty Williams,
Yeah.
the hometown kids. Far and away, they were enough to get past Ron Understall and the Casey Boaz. They actually hit 118
Yeesh.
in their run. And I talked with Myrick Sunday of the shootout, and I asked him about the heat, because you heard a lot of the drivers talking about the reason the speeds were a little less than what you expected and American Ethanol wasn't able to hit too was because how hot and humid it was, and I have no idea what that means. So I asked Myrick Coyle, and he says, actually, the heat's not as big for these super stock boats. He goes, we really want the water conditions and the wind play way more of a factor, but to hit 118 and take the Top Gun for our hometown kids, and Performance Boat Center being the title sponsor
Yeah.
of the event, very well represented. And of course, you had two other huge things taking place. Baby gender reveal.
Oh,
Of course,
yeah, for Dugan's grandkid,
yeah,
right?
Captain Ron and Nicole Dugan, their son Colton and his lady, they're having their first baby,
Right.
and it was undecided or unknown, boy or girl. And with the Brian Carroll Air Show, the smoke was going to come out and end up coming out pink.
Oh,
so it's going to
okay.
be a girl. Congratulations to the Dugan family, of course, Colton Walters and his lovely lady Brianne Lynch. So super excited for them. And then of course Brian Carroll, he puts on the air show, and he actually ran right next to, right with Performance
That
with
was
Myrick
great.
Coyle and Rusty Williams.
Oh, man, that was great. That was like one of my favorite parts of the whole weekend was that air show thing.
It's crazy because he goes straight up, turns his airplane off. Then you just see it free falling.
I know.
It's insane, and,
Yeah.
and you won't see that anywhere else in the country.
And he's flying. I mean, his wing was like maybe, 3 feet off the water?
I was
That
just waiting for
amazing.
Myrick to reach out the window, grab the wing, and be taken up in the air. He's out of control. He likes to film that from the cockpit. But super great shootout weekend. I'm so eager to see what that total
What was your
number
favorite part
will
of
be.
the weekend?
It's-
I love the Hall of Fame dinner. That was greatness.
I love that. It's really hard to say. You gotta love the wishing on a ride event.
Oh, yeah. Don't get me started. I'll start crying.
Well, I think my favorite part is just being in the middle of it, throughout the week, and seeing how many people it takes.
Yeah.
They give up their time, give up their effort, their resources to volunteer, join the boards, join the committees, all to represent and raise money for their favorite charities. It really is an incredible act of service and selflessness by so many individuals, and I will guarantee you that the charities and the fire departments, they don't get through the year in some instances without the Lake of the Ozarks shootout, and it's just getting started. There's lofty goals for this event moving forward.
Well, yeah. Well, and I asked Captain Ron and Gary Mawson on the Spotlight Show this week, so when does planning start for next year? Hey, it already has, man.
It did, yeah.
Yeah, they're already getting ready for shootout 34 next year. So
It's gonna be big. So speaking of boating, you didn't see him at this year's shootout, but one of the more iconic and recognizable names in the speedboat world is Miss Geico.
Right.
Correct.
Everybody's heard of that, right?
Yeah, and well, Geico is officially pulling their sponsorship of the Geico boat, and they've withdrew for the rest of the season. So the 14-year run for the Miss Geico boat, it's the 47-foot Victory catamaran. They've always run in Class 1, and they have won numerous national and world championships. So here's the story right from Speed on the Water. And arguably the biggest hit yet in what has been a challenging offshore racing season, the Miss Geico offshore racing team, which until now campaigned a 47-foot Victory catamaran in the Class 1 ranks, is out for the rest of the season, which its sponsor not renewing in 22 effectively ends the team's 14-year run. The team received the announcement from its longtime backer recently, and their announcement said the Geico sponsorship of Miss Geico Racing Team was set to conclude at the end of 21, and we've mutually made the decision to withdraw from the remainder of the racing season, the release stated. We'd like to say thank you to the many loyal fans, organizers, and communities for the amazing support over the last 14 years. Now, none of the Miss Geico owners could be reached. Steve Curtis, who is the throttleman for Miss Geico, he was visiting family in the United Kingdom. He was reached by phone, and he wouldn't really elaborate. He just said it was a mutual decision. He doesn't have a lot of details. So he said he's going to fly back to the States, so he's not so sure what this means. And the crazy thing is, not only Steve Curtis been a long time, he was also in the Spirit of Qatar that set the record at 244 or 241 in 2011. He was in that boat, and he has been fortunate enough to race with the likes of James Shepard, and now the newest driver for Miss Geico, Travis Pastrana. We've all heard his name, so it looks like that run comes to an end. So maybe somebody would come in if Geico's out and will sponsor that boat. Maybe we ought to get Lake TV to sponsor it.
Hey, there you go.
We'll call it Miss
right?
Lake TV Lightning or something.
Miss Lake TV.
Guys, get behind us. Just send some checks for a couple mil here and there, and we'll be right on it, right?
But with this Miss Geico boat was here as a part of Lake Race, right? A couple years ago, I think.
Oh, they've made appearances at the lake. They weren't here this year. Travis Pastrana has not made his appearance at the lake. But yeah, Miss Geico had come to a couple of lake races, and they even ran in the shootout a few years ago. So it's always a draw when they go anywhere. Probably the most iconic, recognizable boat in the history of speedboat racing, but potentially no more. And that boat, that victory, could be bought by somebody else or could be sponsored by somebody else. So maybe we'll see Andrew Evans and Ricky Smith running that next year in the shootout.
Kind of makes you wonder what's going on with Geico if they're pulling that sponsorship. It may be economic reasons, something like that.
Did you see what happened? Actually, the reason we feel, or a lot of reports have said, one of their members on their aero team, which does air shows and skydiving, they were prepping for an event for Pennsylvania, and they were practicing, lost his life prepping for that event, and that was when Geico came out and made the announcement they were pulling their extreme sports, high-speed sports sponsorships across the board, and a lot believe that was the reason that they made this pull.
Tragic.
Crazy. All right, so in our next story, the landslide we talked about a month ago is washing away, and it's getting worse. We have a video here courtesy of Lake Expo. Before we show that, what can you tell us?
So we actually talked about this a couple of months ago. Landslide, it began in May, right? So we're into September now. This thing happened back in May, so several months of this, and it's continued to chew almost all the way through the street there in the neighborhood. It started out bad, and it's just gotten worse. First began on May 19th on Ozark Isle Road, okay, and the Road and Bridge Department had cited concerns about the landslide's proximity to a nearby water treatment plant. So this is the issue, right? It's not just fixing the street, fixing the landslide. It's close to this water treatment plant, and that's causing some big issues and slowing things down, obviously, since nothing has really happened since May on this. 3 months later now, the road continues to vanish. The landslide keeps chewing into the hillside there. A statement on the Camden County Emergency Management Agency's website this month explained the cost to remedy the situation would be between $250,000 and $500,000. To fix this thing. The county says they will contract the work out. Road and Bridge Department added that they were waiting on a lake area wastewater estimate for the cost of taking care of the temporary treatment facility for the water. So it's more than the road. It's all these different issues going on. But can you imagine living in that neighborhood and the landslide is kind of taking that neighborhood away and nothing's being done about it?
Yeah.
Wow.
I would probably be a little upset. Sad situation. Hopefully they're able to find a way. When they say contract it out, I would say they want to do that sooner than later.
I would think so. Well, and they are saying they do expect to have it completed by the end of the year. Let's hope so. Into September, so you got September, October, November, December, 4 months to get that. Hopefully you can get that fixed. And again, I think there's another way out of the neighborhood. I mean, that road that's going away isn't the only way out. I think you can go around a different way, but obviously you want to get that fixed.
Yeah, heck yeah. So we'll keep you posted on that as we move forward. So in our last local story, I wanted to read a really cool article that was published as an opinion piece in this year's Lake of the Ozarks Shootout Guide by Christy Wagner. Now, I said earlier that she's with Lake Expo. She's actually a freelance writer, and she does stuff for all kinds of outlets, and this was not through Lake Expo. It was through the Shootout Program Guide, which was shared through Lake Expo. But nonetheless, I thought this was phenomenal. The title of the piece was Lake of the Ozarks, Wild and Free, and I'm going to share it with you now. American naturalist, poet, and philosopher Henry David Thoreau once proclaimed that all good things were wild and free. After living at Lake of the Ozarks for over a decade, and especially over the past year and a half, I would have to say that I agree. Between the browbeating, mid-pandemic news reports of our booming local businesses to Hollywood's portrayal of our community, try telling one from Los Angeles that you're from Lake of the Ozarks, Missouri. Those unfamiliar with the lake area might wonder who on earth would want to live there. The Convention and Visitors Bureau has actually received calls from people trying to verify that the Lake of the Ozarks is a real place.
Yeah.
And as a result, our numbers have never been better as tourists seek respite or satisfy their curiosity while continuing to flock here in droves. In my humble opinion, the lake could not be further from mainstream media's sporadic criticism or Netflix's questionable interpretations, and notoriety aside, and I am beyond thankful to call it home. Ladies and gentlemen, we raised nearly $500,000 last year for our lake area charities, nonprofits, and first responders. Of course, she's referring to the shootout.
Right.
We are surrounded by the fabric of hundreds of thousands of tourists every year, and yet the Lake of the Ozarks continues to be a tightly woven community filled with life, liberty, and the attainable pursuit of happiness. We might be just another fictitious TV show or unmasked pool party to an outside world which hastily defines us as unbridled and remiss, but not to us. To us, we are in a world of our own. And with that, I hope we never stop making headlines. I hope every single person who might be wondering if we are indeed a real place will come here to answer that question for themselves, because I know they're going to love it. With whatever the future holds, I hope every big city reporter who somberly broadcasts the sad state of affairs at Lake of the Ozarks will continue to stroll along the Bagnell Dam Strip minutes later, happily chatting and talking or taking the lake in. Because like all good things, we are wild and we are free. Christy Wagner. Thought that was well done, and that was shared all over the place. So solid job, really good writer, and of course that is the wife of Chris Wagner with WAI Marine Insurance and Farmers Insurance.
She is really sharp. I think she put together the shootout guide this year.
Yeah, she did. She coordinated it and was a huge help in promoting the events. And you know, with that, you got to give a shout out to Dave Leathers, Showcase Publishing, that program guide he does every year. The last couple of years has donated $40,000 annually directly to the shootout from that. So pretty outstanding. In sports, couple of cool stories, Chris. Remember the name Jeremy Macklin?
Yeah,
he was all-pro.
Big Mizzou player, right?
Yeah, a couple of Pro Bowls for the Eagles and the Chiefs. And then, of course, big-time All-American at Mizzou. So now he's coaching.
Oh, really?
Yeah, he's coaching in Illinois, and he's coaching for the Kirkwood Pioneers, and his head coaching career got off to a wonderful start, 55-14 over Bellevue West. So good for Coach Macklin, and definitely better than the headlines that Trent Dilfer is making for his coaching. And did you see that video?
I did not. No,
he
I didn't
had
see
a
that.
rough encounter with a student he was pretty upset with and got called out for, but good for Coach Macklin, and man, one of my all-time favorite Tigers, what he was able to do in special teams as a runner out of the slot, and of course catching passes from Blaine Gabbert, and then before that, Chase Daniel.
And you know what? We got to meet another former Mizzou player, Warren Seitz, who's now coaching Versailles, because we had the Versailles Knob-Noster game on Lake TV last Friday night. Good guy, real nice guy, great coach. I mean, this Versailles program is going to get good in the next few years. They're pretty good this year, so that was great.
And we'll talk about all of our local schools, because it was a good week for our local schools. And then in other sports outside of Jeremy Macklin, talking about the Kansas City Chiefs like we teased, they win 28-25 over the Vikings. And despite that close score, Chris, it was never that close. The Chiefs blew out the Vikings in the first quarter, ended up taking a 21-3 lead at the half with almost 300 yards of total offense in that first half. Now, this is what I love to see. Patrick Mahomes, you know, he finished 8 of 9 for 117 yards and 2 touchdowns, which was good for a 158.3 passer rating. And I don't care if it is preseason, bodes well.
That's pretty good.
Headed into the year, Travis Kelce had 2 catches for 35 yards. Tyreek had 1 35-yard catch that ended up being a touchdown. So the big three making some big noise, and of course there are other contributors, but man, I'm so ready for football season to kick off. We started with high school Friday night. You got college about to get going, and of course the NFL. If we talk about our local schools, Chris, my goodness, you've got Eldon.
Yep.
They win 42-14 at Springfield Central, and they're home Friday against Owensville, the Dutchmen. Long rivalry there. They've played numerous times in the district semifinals and championship over the last 5 years, so that'll be one to keep an eye on.
Yep.
How about the Camdenton Lakers? They win. Didn't they beat Kickapoo?
Yeah, they beat Kickapoo in a good, tight, close game, but the defense was great. I think they held Kickapoo to negative 20 rushing yards.
Wow.
That's domination right there. And you can see Coach Jeff Shore and Osage Coach Shannon Jolly on our Lake TV Coaches Show Tuesdays through Friday, every week during the season, Tuesdays through Friday at 10 in the morning, 2 in the afternoon, and 6 in the evening, right here on Lake TV.
Presented by Central Ozarks
yeah.
Medical Center. And so Kickapoo and Camdenton won 22-14, and they will be home again Friday, playing host to Waynesville. Coach Joe Haynes comes into town with the Waynesville team. That's going to be real tough. You said Osage. Speaking of Coach Shannon Jolly, his second trip to Osage gets off to a good start. They beat Fulton on the road, 24-19.
And that was with 5 turnovers. They won that game, turned the ball over 5 times, and still won. Yeah.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
So 5 turnovers. Now they're going to be at home for their home opener Friday night against Moberly. That'll be your Lake TV game of the week.
That's right.
Also, we have the Versailles game. They won 21-14 at home against Knob Noster. They'll travel to Warsaw to play the Wildcats Friday night. And then, of course, California, new coach. They win their opener at St. James, 24-6. And they're going to be home against Fulton, the same team Osage beat on the road. So we might end up having some really competitive local teams this year. We start chomping at the bit, getting excited, because we love nothing more than our Friday nights together. And now it's time for our weekly segments. One thing I've got for you is a quick funny story, and then I think we're going to be out of time, but Uncle Chris, you're going to want to hear this one.
Okay, I'm ready.
New segment. We're going to have a great story for you each week that we're going to read and see if we can't get Uncle Chris to laugh. Here we go.
Okay.
So the IRS decided to audit Grandpa and summoned him to the IRS office. The IRS auditor was not surprised when Grandpa showed up with his attorney. The auditor said, "Well, sir, you have an extravagant lifestyle and no full-time employment, which you explain that you win money gambling. Well, we here at the IRS are finding that hard to believe." Grandpa goes, "I'm a great gambler and I can prove it. How about a demonstration?" Well, the auditor thinks for a moment and says, "Okay, go ahead." Grandpa says, "I'll bet you $1,000 that I can bite my own eye." The auditor thinks and goes, "It's a bet." Grandpa removes his glass eye and bites it. The auditor's jaw drops. Grandpa says, "Now I'll bet you $2,000 I can bite my other eye." The auditor can obviously tell that Grandpa isn't blind, so he takes the bet. Grandpa removes his dentures and he bites his good eye. The stunned auditor now realizes he has wagered and lost $3,000 with Grandpa's attorney a witness. He starts to get nervous. "Do you want to go double or nothing?" Grandpa asks. "I'll tell you what, I'll bet you $6,000 I can stand on one side of your desk and pee into that wastebasket on the other side and never get a drop anywhere in between." The auditor, twice burned and pretty cautious now, he looks carefully and decides there's no way this old guy could possibly manage that stunt. So he agrees again. Grandpa stands behind the desk, he unzips his pants, but although he strains mightily, he can't make the stream reach the wastebasket on the other side, so he pretty much just urinates all over the auditor's desk. The auditor leaps with joy. He was realizing he has just turned a major loss into a major win, but Grandpa's attorney moans and puts his head in his hands. The auditor looks at his attorney and says, "Are you okay?" "Not really," says the attorney. "This morning when Grandpa told me he'd been summoned for an audit, he bet me $25,000 he'd walk into your office, pee all over your desk, and you'd be happy about it." You don't mess with Grandpa. How great is that?
Wow, that's quite the story, man.
Isn't that great?
Is that true?
I don't know. It doesn't have to be. I think it's greatness.
Wow, how about that?
That was a weekly segment we'll be bringing to you as we wrap up a big week in the books. But don't forget high school football. We told you about the Coaches Show. We also have our community spotlight that we mentioned, and of course, What's Burning with Kevin KB Burns. Last thing, do not forget Ozarks Amphitheater this weekend, 3-peat. They've got Brantley Gilbert, they've got Hailstorm, and they've got Dwight Yoakam. Go to ozarksamp.com. Incredible crew.
Yeah.
Incredible host here with Jill Ray, Daryl Cunningham,
Yep.
and Slumberland. As for Lake TV, this is Uncle Chris. I'm Wild Will. We'll see you next week.